So good morning, everybody. Alf said, I have 30 minutes to talk. And I said, no ways. I'm not talking for 30 minutes. That's way too long. You don't want to hear my boring voice for 30 minutes. So I'll keep it short. I come now from the perspective of UNIDO, and as Alf has said previously, very much in the South African context, very much working with NCPC and companies that are here, for example, in industrial energy efficiency. But now I've got a different hat, but I'm still very much South African, as you say, Alf. When I thought about this, what should I say here today? I was invited by the NCPC. I thought, you know, everybody speaks about ENMS, energy management systems. Everybody speaks energy efficiency. Everybody might be speaking about systems optimization. And I thought perhaps just let's take a different lens and start looking at some of the other opportunities that are arising. Because as UNIDO, we're also looking at what are the further programmatic opportunities we need to start investing in and building up a sense of capacity around. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the opportunities for deep decarbonization in industry. So as Alf has shown you, the energy management system and systems optimization program of UNIDO started in South Africa in 2010 and has progressed to 20 countries where it's already implemented and 10 countries where there are plans to implement the same program or parts of the program. The program obviously doesn't run on love and fresh air. There are funders that put money into this, and for the most part, it's been the Global Environment Facility. But of course, there are others, like the South African government, for example, other governments, and being the Swiss, for example, and the UK government. So we mustn't forget that there's also that aspect that comes to these programs, that UNIDO itself does not fund projects. We find donors to help countries implement these projects. Some of the stats may be out of date, as Alpha's just given us even new stats that we need to incorporate in here. But essentially, it says that there's been a massive increase over the years, over the 9 or so years that we've been involved in energy efficiency, energy management systems, where a number of people have been affected, enterprises have been affected and reached out to, and of course that has resulted in a number of, well, quite a large amount of energy savings through the program. Just to give a little bit of perspective on that, I mean, Alf put some big numbers up that we have to now fold into these old numbers that I have, but essentially showing the fact that a huge number of, or a huge amount of energy has been saved, and that translates to, again, beyond 6 million tons of CO2 mitigated. And of course, there's a pipeline of projects that are now being generated because of the interventions that the project is doing in various countries. So, to my current role a little bit, as Alf introduced me, or what I do at the moment, I work in an environment now where we're dealing with something called the Clean Energy Ministerial. And in the Clean Energy Ministerial, there are 27 countries who are really committed to a clean energy future. And the work we do with them is we try to, I'm specifically on the energy management working group, so we try to work with governments to find pathways, strategies for them to best implement energy management systems as part of their policy mix. So what we found is, and South Africa is part of this mix as well. Our representative, Barry, is sitting there on the right at the back, or in the middle, he's hiding now. But essentially what we found is that this group of countries is a really big chunk of world energy use, and therefore, of course, has a really big impact on the carbon the carbon emissions, the GHG emissions that are emitted globally. So the question is really, how can we, as this group of countries, start working on strategies to decarbonize? What we know is that at the moment, many countries have signed the Paris Agreement, ratified it. People have made commitments to mitigate carbon. And there's this ambition to be net zero carbon by 2050. It's quite ambitious. I remember yesterday Alf was talking quite seriously and controversially maybe in places about how South Africa is going to take the leap forward to get to its target, carbon targets in the next 10 years or whatever. The fact of the matter is energy efficiency has done a lot in mitigating carbon. And the energy efficiency programs we have rolled out have done a lot to mitigate carbon. The difficulty there is energy efficiency in itself only takes us to a specific point. And there are other strategies we may have to employ on top of energy efficiency that will help us along to these carbon targets. What we find, and I know through Alf's work with the cement industry and the steel industry, for example, these are industries that are heavily process-driven. They have challenges in bringing the energy consumption down, in mitigating carbon, and they are industries we call hard-to-abate industries. And so there's a need in these industries to start taking a leap forward and thinking about how do we best address their specific needs in trying to mitigate the carbon from their processes from their processes. So, what we found is we did a little bit of a study, a desktop study with a consultancy here in South Africa, by the way, at UNIDO, in order to start categorizing where can we programmatically start intervening, where can countries and companies start thinking about what is it that we need to do beyond energy efficiency or in conjunction with energy efficiency. What are the things we need to do going forward? So when we look at it from a sector-specific space, we can see energy efficiency is not going to go away. It's always going to be the base on which you build any carbon mitigation strategy. So do not think Alf and team will go away. This is going to be the basis for all work that we will do on mitigating carbon. But there are other issues that we need to consider. You know, from a process perspective, do we need to start thinking about electrifying processes more? Do we need to start replacing certain fuels in order to, or switching certain fuels in order to mitigate carbon more aggressively? Do we need to use carbon capture and storage as a means to mitigate carbon? The cross-cutting themes that we see as areas where industry and policymakers can make a difference is, again, looking at areas of industrial heat, renewable electricity, and renewable electricity for industry, which is a topic on its own. It's something in its infancy and really needs to be accelerated. Industry value chains. I mean, I spoke to a gentleman last night, I don't know if he's here, from Excellent Meat, and they're part of the Woolworths value chain. And the point of the matter is, within value chains, within supply chains, there are so many opportunities to mitigate carbon because the OEMs have this power, so to speak, to influence their supply chains. And we're not seeing enough of that, where OEMs can make build into the supply chain certain standards, for example, that can get compliance and therefore reduce carbon emissions from those supply chains. So this is an area, I think, even in the IE project globally, where we can push this agenda even harder. The other area that comes up regularly is this new area of digitalization. And digitalization can be as simple as, are you monitoring your energy use in order to manage it better? I mean, that's the very basic type of digitalization we could talk of. There are a number of other elements to digitalization which is more sophisticated. But at the moment, we can start as simple as possible by just measuring what we are consuming in order to manage. Yesterday I was here again, and the topic of circular economy is very high on the agenda with NCPC. We see circular economy issues of material efficiency, of better design, eco-friendly design of products and processes as a step forward in decarbonizing industry as well. So all of these elements that has been spoken around the table over the last day and will be spoken about today, all of these elements are part of the strategy to decarbonize industry further and shouldn't be seen, as separate things really to be done separately. They are the strategies that industry need to take on board as appropriate on top of energy efficiency. So from a policy perspective, and we encourage governments especially to look at their regulations, to look at their mandates, to look at roadmaps and standards in order to start affecting this deep decarbonization of industry. We've heard yesterday about carbon tax. We've heard yesterday about 12L incentives that will be continued up till 2020, if I remember correctly. These are all elements that we need to start engaging with in order to take the opportunity to decarbonize our industry. I know ALF in the IE project, we're hoping to get working on some financing options for industry as well, building business cases that can be investment ready. These are other elements that need to be in place for government and industry to better address the decarbonization effort. And of course, what we're doing here, we're raising awareness, and this can never stop. I think with ALF's point on behavior change, every document, every project document we write, awareness raising. But as you said, Alf, the key there is getting mindsets to change. And this is a study field all on its own. I mean, we're doing some work globally on this, and nobody quite has it, down packed yet. How do we get people to change minds around energy efficiency and decarbonization? So there are a lot of efforts going on. There's a lot of good work done by teams like with what Alf and the team here is doing in getting companies to turn their heads, to change their minds about certain perspectives and certain priorities. We heard yesterday on the carbon tax, even though there's so many concessions in the carbon tax, at least it's making companies think about what this means to their liability, their tax liability, and therefore what it means to be decarbonizing their processes. So at least there's some kind of nudge, even in a disincentive or a tax, to get people to change their point of view. We, of course, know that there are challenges. We will, as we've been nudging towards certain financial incentives, we know that there are certain barriers to access to finance, and much of it is awareness about what is out there. We know that there could be long lead times when you trying to invest in certain equipment. When we deal with circular economy, it's not only about production processes, it's about consumer behavior as well. So there's a bigger effort needed around consumer awareness around circular economy issues, about sustainability issues, and about purchasing specific types of products. And of course, the one at the bottom, I'm not going to go read all of them, but there's this acceptability of certain technologies that could hamper progress of decarbonization. And we had a specific issue on carbon capture and storage where certain communities were not happy that the facilities are being built in their vicinity. So this is another element that we need to consider, that what we're doing affects communities as well, could affect communities, and therefore the acceptability of these interventions become key to success. So for those, especially the policymakers around the table, but also for industry looking forward, beyond the current good work you're doing in energy efficiency, energy management, systems optimization, start to look at the other areas that I'm going to highlight now as opportunities for future decarbonization, because, as I said, on our current trajectory, even in South Africa, we will not meet our carbon targets. So we need to take a step forward, we need to take a step up, we need to take a step change in the way we address carbon. Developing benchmarking best practice. The interesting thing is we are just about to start some work with Sanedi on this work, and I know the DTI has done a lot of work on benchmarking and best practice for certain industry sectors. So there's a lot of work now happening or about to happen in this space, specifically around benchmarking in sectors and data collection in sectors. This will also lead to work in identifying specific technology types that could be benchmarked in specific sectors. And again, for industry, this becomes important because then you know where to put your money in terms of being able to procure the right kinds of systems in order to decarbonize quicker. As I said earlier, one of the very key areas we can play a strong role is in industrial value chains. Small businesses, there is a proliferation of small businesses in South Africa. The opportunity is untapped in terms of energy savings. So there's a lot of work that is available for the NCPC, for consultants, for energy services companies to help small businesses in industrial value chains to decarbonize or to lower their energy footprint. And then, as I said at the beginning, one of the key drivers of deep decarbonization is the fact that we have certain industries that have a very hard time trying to drive down their CO2 emissions. And so we need to come up with strategies to help those industries, cement, metals, chemicals, to drive down their carbon footprint. And here we talk about things like proper kinds of partnerships that we need to develop between ourselves, industry, academic institutions, facilitate certain pilots within industry. Somebody said to me, oh, well, why are the governments industry person said, why should the governments try to find new technology solutions? There are industrial players who already know what the best technologies are. Why don't you just ask them? And they'll tell you what the best technologies are. So there's an exercise we need to go through. Certain cement players will know already what the best way to abate carbon is with certain processes, what the best technologies are. Can we share that information amongst other cement players. So this is, again, a tactic that NCPC and other implementing agencies can start using, and government itself can start using, to drive the deep decarbonization of industry. With that, I thank you, and I trust that I've stimulated some forward thinking beyond energy efficiency, and I thank you and enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.